there's more.
Well, here I am. It's Sunday afternoon, and I'm in my hometown and nestled on the Fox River. What a gem! Surprise, surprise, surprise. This is the Pointe Coupee Museum, and you all can visit, no charge. And this is Harry. He's the docent, and okay, Harry, you're on.
This is the outside of the original cabin. This original cabin was made out of solid cypress, hand-hewn wood. The method and material that it's made out of helps us to date it, and we know who made it because it's built like French people build things. It's dovetailed on the corners, and it's mortised and pinned in the attic, and it's hand cut into boards. The British used timbers, full timbers, to build their cabins. Now, because of the mortise and pins, we can date it to 1760. So the building is over 250 years old. The room we're in is newer, and it's because of this wall. We know that. This wall is made of mud and moss. You actually have animal hair in here. The mud and moss is called boussiage, which is a French word. And what they did was they took local moss and packed mud into the wall, allowed it to dry, and then they whitewashed over it. And they made a nice smooth wall. This was a great insulation, but this room, because of that wall, we know to be at least 60 years newer than the rest of the cabin. So we're talking probably 1830, 1840.
My goodness. And you said how it's kind of like an adobe where it keeps us...
That's right. It works like an adobe. It's a very good insulation. It's baked mud. It's dried mud inside the wall. Now, this house was part of Portier Plantation, which is about a half a mile up the road. And it's been part of Portier for its entire existence. Now, in 1927, a man named Allen Ramsey Wertel came here and he bought 2,000 acres from Portier Plantation. And he bought it with this house as the big house. And he named it Ramsey Plantation. Now, in 1944, this house, which dated to 1850, was struck by lightning and burned to the ground. And it was replaced by this house, which is almost the same house, other than the dormers. There's 3 dormers on that house and only 2 on this one. Now, this house was used in 1958 to film the movie Long Hot Summer with Paul Newman and Joanne Woodward. Now, Joanna Wertel, who lives in this house today, is the daughter of Allen Ramsey Wertel, and she donated this property to Pointe Coupee Parish so that we can make it into a museum. Now, Mr. Wertel, do I need to close the door?
No, that's okay.
All right. Mr. Wertel was not only a farmer, but he was an author. Both of these books were written by Allen Ramsey Wertel. One in 1941, one in 1944. But he was more than just a farmer and an author. He was also an inventor. And he was a very famous inventor for this area because he invented the first mechanical sugarcane harvester. Now, when you consider going from cutting sugarcane by hand to having a machine to cut it, the farmer could literally quadruple his income in 1 year just by having a machine. So it was a very big invention for this area. Let's continue into the rest of the house.
And how did he get it sold? For them to you know, use that the idea. How did he sell his idea? He
sold his idea by allowing the farmers to see how efficient the machine was. What he did was he brought the machine out and he put it against men. The local historians said that the cane cutter, the original first cane cutter, could put a ton of sugar cane on the ground in 4 minutes. So when they put that up against men, it took 60 men 4 minutes to cut a ton of sugar cane. So as I mentioned to a lot of tours, they did not have to feed the machine, they did not have to pay the machine, and the machine never got tired.
are sick. Hallelujah.
That's right. So the invention of the mechanical sugarcane harvester was a big boom for this area.
Oh, yeah.
And not only did it increase farmers' wages, but it increased acreage, which meant there was more sugar for everyone in the country.
Right, right.
So here is a loom. This is made of ash. It dates to the late 1700s. The loom was used to make material. They would take natural resources like cotton. Here's cotton on the stalk. It's a natural white cotton. They would comb it out with these combs.
Oh, look at that.
And then they would spin it into thread on the spinning wheels. And then they would
Work.
put it into the loom and make it into material. The loom, the method of building the loom was to mortise and wedged. And the reason for this was the loom was considered community property. So everyone in the area used it. So what would happen was once a lady was through making the material she needed to make, it was disassembled, it was moved to someone else's house, it was reassembled, she would use it. Now because this is a local loom, we cannot say that this was not in this house at some point before it became a museum. In other words, it was moved from his house to another house, it just didn't happen to be here when we opened the museum. Wow. So this may well have been in this house at some point.
Wow.
Now, the furniture also dates to the late 1700s, excuse me.
Hard to see, but look at this.
It's cowhide seats, and the bottom, they didn't have tacks or anything like that, so the bottom was just stripped and tied together, is how they fastened the cowhide to the seat.
Built to last.
Well, the seats are and the furniture is very small, and it's because people in the 1700s were normally small people. A man that was 5'3", 5'4" was considered the big guy in town. So yes, people were not as big as they are today. So the furniture would have fit adults perfectly, even though it looks like children's furniture. We have a pestle and mortar. This is a block of wood that the householder would have used to hull corn. She would have pulverized it down to first make grits and then make cornmeal, whatever she desired to make. This kept her from having to go to New Roads to try to grind her corn, because that would have been an all-day event to haul the corn to New Roads, get it ground, and come back. The small pestle and mortar is made of stone on the table here. It would have been used for medicine or possibly seasonings. Her gumbo filet would have been made there. Her peppercorns would have been cracked and crushed in there. Like I said, herbs were used for medicines at the time, so they would have been prepared in that pestle and mortar. We have a pie safe. This was where the food was stored. You have cheesecloth over the front of the door in order to help you to keep flies and insects off the food. There were no screens at the time, so they used cheesecloth. Now the cup that you see at the bottom of each leg has a trough around it. That would have been filled with water or oil, and that would have kept the ants from crawling up the legs and getting into the food. So that was pest control. Now this beauty,
cheap pest control.
This beauty was
get to work.
every housewife's dream right here. This is corn husk that's jammed down into this wooden block, and it was made into a broom. But this is very heavy. So, and it probably wasn't efficient either. So when this went out of date, they moved into this type of broom, which is broom corn tied to a stick with baling wire. So this had to be a little bit more efficient.
More recognizable to us.
And a lot lighter, easier for the housewife to handle. So this was an improvement as far as brooms were concerned. Let's look into the bedroom. In the bedroom, you had your nighttime facilities. Here was your faucet. Here was your sink. And there was your toilet.
Oh my goodness. Very compact.
The daytime facilities was the outhouse in the back.
Okay.
Now, we have a bed here, which is also dated to the late 1700s. We know this because it's mortised and pinned with wooden pins. and it's made of cypress. If you can shoot in here, you can see the pins that go through in order to hold it together.
Oh.
That's right. And this is just
sturdy.
This is just a wooden slat that's cut from a tree. Now, in the mattresses, this bottom mattress is made of corn husks. They slept on a mattress made of corn husk. Then, as time went on, they moved into this style, which is Spanish moss. Spanish moss was harvested from the trees locally. It was brought to a moss gin, and it was cleaned. And then once it was cleaned, it was used to stuff their mattresses. It was used to stuff their chairs, and it had a lot of different uses. Now, this top mattress is the Tempur-Pedic of the time. This is made of feathers. So this is a feather mattress. You wouldn't have had all three of these mattresses, but because we want an example of how things changed over time, we show all three of the mattresses. The bed would have had sticks on it, and it would have helped the housewife to make the bed, and it would also been used to knock the lumps out the feathers, so that the bed can be smoothed out and kept nice. And these were always on the bed. Like I said, the adults would have been here. The trundle underneath the bottom would have been pulled out for the middle-sized kids. The babies would have been in there. Everyone would have had to have mosquito nets.
Oh, yeah. Oh, okay.
Everyone would have had to have mosquito nets. Now, if you'd like, we'll step outside.
Look on the mantle. This is a picture of St. Joseph, Jesus, the Blessed Mother. Look how old it is.
Yes.
Oh my goodness.
It's one of the, we don't know how old. It's one of the oldest
12?
pieces.
Little prayer book. So look, they prayed before they went to bed. Praise the Lord. Amazing. Oh, good. Some air. The river, our False River.
That's False River.
Beautiful.
Beautiful False River.
Oh, praise the Lord.
So,
gorgeous day.
This was the dovetail construction I mentioned earlier in the tour. The French used this type of construction. There were no nails necessary in this construction. Because of the way it's made, it would lock into one another. And this building is 250 years old, and it's as solid as it could be. There's not going to be many places around in 250 years that's being built today. Mr. Wertel that we talked about earlier is buried there. There's Mr. Wertel's gravesite. Okay.
Didn't leave home.
That's it. He must have wanted a view of the river. We have a kettle here, which was taken from one of the mills.
It is. Oh my goodness.
It was taken from one of the local sugar mills. It was used to cook down sugarcane syrup, juice to make sugar.
Okay. On the river. That's amazing. And said a new roof now.
Yes, we just had a new roof
Get the
put
new
on.
roof.
It's made of cedar shingles. The original was cypress, but it gave away after a couple hundred years.
That's amazing. Oh my goodness. What was that over there?
Over where? That building?
Little building.
This little building here is the bathroom. That's the outhouse.
Oh, that's it. It looked different. I thought it was those little
That's the
sloping-
outhouse.
Oh.
From the front, it does look old. It's all wood. But from the side, it's painted.
And look at the window. Remind you, it looks like you're in jail.
Well, that
Look at
was
that.
because this was probably an overseer's cabin. And the overseer would have had to dispense pay, and he would have had to dispense medicines through here. And he wouldn't have wanted people coming in through his house. So he probably dispensed it through something like this.
Oh my goodness. And look at the suitcase. They even went on vacation.
That was a cowhide suitcase, yes.
Oh my goodness.
Cowhide suitcase. Now, our blankets, they're not real old. They date to the early 1900s, probably 1910 to 1930.
Get a little peek. Looks, little chairs, little dolls, little arm. Oh my goodness. Kettles. Praise the Lord.
Do we
to the
want to
front.
talk about False River?
Yeah.